Admiral Peter Collins stood on the observation deck of Titan Station and watched the largest evacuation in human history unfold before him. Ships of every size filled the space around Saturn's largest moon. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, military escorts, and private craft all moved in careful patterns as they prepared for the journey home. The message had gone out 12 hours ago. Every human in alien space had received the same simple order: return to Earth immediately. Abandon your posts, pack what you can carry, and come home. No exceptions. Peter had sent that message himself, though the decision came from much higher up the chain of command. President Bennett and the Earth Council had been planning this moment for months, hoping they would never need to use it. But when Jake Morrison placed that blue pin on the podium, everything changed. Admiral, the transport Yorktown is requesting permission to dock, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Davis said from her station. They have evacuees from the Kepler system. Grant permission. Bay 7 is clear, Peter replied. He turned to look at the massive display that showed human positions across the galaxy. Each dot represented people coming home: scientists, traders, diplomats, soldiers, engineers, doctors, all of them pulling back from lives they had built among the stars. Dr. Helen Carter sat in the cramped cabin of the transport ship New Hope as it accelerated away from Kepler Prime. Around her, 43 other humans shared the space meant for 20 passengers. They had left behind years of work, research, and friendships. Helen looked at the datapad in her hands. It contained 6 years of research into Altarian blood diseases. She was 3 months away from finding a cure that could save millions of lives. The Altarian government had begged her to stay, offering money, resources, even permanent citizenship. But the recall order was absolute. She thought about Dr. Vel Nera, her Altarian research partner. They had worked 18-hour days together, sharing ideas and breakthroughs. Vel Nara had cried when Helen told her she was leaving. The Altarian doctor said she could not continue the research alone. Helen knew that millions might die because of this decision. But she also knew that humans had been sharing their medical knowledge freely for decades, while alien species charged enormous fees for their own discoveries. Maybe it was time for that to change. Colonel Ryan Blake stood in the hangar bay of the battleship Washington as his troops loaded their equipment. 3,000 human peacekeepers were leaving the Vega sector, where they had maintained peace between 6 different species for 4 years. The alien governments in the sector had sent desperate messages begging the humans to stay. Without human peacekeepers, old conflicts would start again within weeks. The Rigel Republic and the outer colonies were already moving warships toward disputed systems. Colonel, the Vegan ambassador, is here again, Sergeant Katie Moore reported. He wants to speak with you. Ryan had already talked to 5 different alien ambassadors in the past 6 hours. They all said the same thing. Humans could not leave. The peace would collapse. There would be war. Tell him what I told the others, Ryan said. We offered to be partners in keeping the peace. The council voted to keep us as hired security instead. Well, our contract just expired. Ryan thought about the good people his troops were leaving behind. Vegan farmers who had invited human soldiers to family dinners, Rigel engineers who had worked alongside human technicians to build better ships, children of a dozen species who had learned to speak English just to talk to human peacekeepers. But he also remembered the council meetings where alien delegates talked about human troops like they were equipment to be used and replaced. They wanted human blood to protect their worlds, but they did not want human voices in their government. Captain Danny Rodriguez piloted his patrol ship Phoenix toward the extraction point at Wolf 359. In his cargo bay, he carried 22 humans from different mining operations in the system. They had abandoned facilities worth billions of credits. The mining operations in Wolf 359 produced rare metals that many alien species needed for their technology. Human engineers had designed new, Extraction methods that were 3 times more efficient than anything the aliens had used before. The mines would probably shut down within months without human expertise. Danny had received frantic communications from the Wolf 359 Mining Consortium. They offered to double human salaries, provide better housing, even give humans ownership. Stakes in the mines. But it was too late for offers. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the consortium," his communications officer reported. "They are threatening to file complaints with the Galactic Council about breach of contract." Danny laughed. "Tell them to take it up with the Council. Oh wait, we just quit the Council. I guess they will have to figure it out themselves." Back on Titan Station, Admiral Collins received reports from across the galaxy. The numbers were staggering. 40,000 humans working in alien space. Another 60,000 dependents, spouses, children, and civilian contractors, all of them coming home. The economic impact would be massive. Human-run trade routes handled 30% of all galactic commerce. Human security forces protected. Major shipping lanes from pirates. Human engineers maintained critical infrastructure on dozens of worlds. "Admiral, priority message from Earth Command," Commander Sarah Davis announced. Collins read the message on his personal display. It was from President Bennett herself. "Peter, I know this seems extreme, but the alien species need to understand that partnership works both ways. They can have our help as equals, or they can learn to live without it. There is no middle ground anymore." The evacuation continued for 3 days. Ships arrived at Titan Station in steady streams, each one carrying humans who had given up their lives in alien space. Some were angry about leaving. Others were relieved to be coming home. Most were simply confused about what would happen next. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's new Secretary of State, arrived on the 3rd day to oversee the final phase of the evacuation. She had been Jake Morrison's deputy for 2 years and knew the alien species better than almost any human. "How many are still out there?" she asked Collins. "Less than 500, he replied. "Most of those are deep space researchers who need more time to reach extraction points. Everyone else should be home within the week." Rachel nodded and looked out at the stream of ships heading toward Earth. "Do you think we are making a mistake, Peter? Walking away from everything we built out there?" Collins was quiet for a moment. "I think we have been making a mistake for years. We gave them everything and asked for nothing in return except basic respect. They could not even give us that." "The aliens are starting to panic," Rachel said. "We are receiving thousands of messages every hour. Threats, bribes, pleas for negotiation. Some species are offering everything they denied us before." "Too late," Collins replied. "They had their chance to treat us as equals. They chose to keep us as servants instead. Now, they get to find out what happens when the servants quit." The last human transport left alien space on day 7 of the evacuation. Behind them, they left empty research stations, abandoned mining operations, and confused alien species who suddenly realized how much they had depended on human knowledge and expertise. The galaxy had grown used to human ships patrolling their trade routes, human doctors treating their diseases, human engineers solving their problems, and human soldiers dying for their peace. Now the humans were gone, and the aliens were about to learn what they had really lost. Captain Danny Rodriguez floated in the command chair of the battleship New York, watching the edge of human space through the main display. 6 months had passed since the last human transport returned from alien territory. 6 months of silence from the galaxy beyond. No alien ship had crossed into human space during that time. Not one. The invisible line that marked the boundary of Earth's influence might as well have been a solid wall. On the other side of that line, long-range sensors detected massive amounts of military traffic, but none of it came toward human worlds. "Captain, sensor sweep complete," reported Lieutenant Tom Sullivan from his station. "No alien vessels within 20 light-years of the perimeter, same as yesterday and the day before that." Danny nodded. The silence was almost worse than threats. When alien species were angry, they sent angry messages. When they wanted to negotiate, they sent diplomats. When they planned to attack, they moved fleets. But this silence meant they were scared. "Any word from Deep Space Monitoring?" Danny asked. "Yes, sir. Commander Parker's latest report came in an hour ago. The situation in former human territories is getting worse." Danny pulled up the intelligence report on his personal screen. Commander Steve Parker ran a network of stealth sensors that watched alien space from hiding spots in dead systems and empty nebulae. His reports painted a picture of growing chaos beyond human borders. The Rigel Republic and the Outer Colonies had gone to war 3 weeks after human peacekeepers left the Vega sector. Without human mediators to negotiate ceasefires, small conflicts grew into major battles. Both sides were demanding that the other surrender completely. The Wolf 359 mining operation had shut down after alien engineers failed to maintain the human-designed extraction systems. 12 other mining colonies faced similar problems. The shortage of rare metals was starting to affect ship construction across the galaxy. Most troubling were the reports from the Galactic Rim, where human forces had maintained a quiet watch on something called the Hegemony. Danny had heard rumors about this group for years, but the details were classified above his level. What he did know was that human intelligence considered them the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. And now, without human watchers, the Hegemony was moving. On Mars, General Amy Foster stood in the Situation Room beneath Olympus Base, reading the same reports that Danny was reviewing 50 million miles away. Around her, intelligence analysts worked at dozens of screens, trying to make sense of the fragmented information coming from alien space. "Ma'am, priority transmission from President Bennett," announced Major Lisa Hayes, who had been promoted after her return from the Galactic Council. Amy accepted the encrypted call on her personal communicator. The president's face appeared on the small screen, looking tired but determined. "Amy, I need your assessment of the situation beyond our borders," President Bennett said without preamble. "It's falling apart faster than we expected, Madam President," Amy replied. "Our economic predictions were accurate. Losing human expertise is crippling their industrial capacity. But the military situation is worse than anyone anticipated." Amy gestured to the large display behind her, which showed a map of the local galactic arm. Red zones marked areas of open conflict. Yellow zones showed military buildups and tensions. Green zones indicated stable regions. There was not much green left. "The species that voted against us are discovering that they actually needed our help," Amy continued. "Not just our trade and technology, but our protection. We were the only force keeping several major threats contained." "Tell me about the Hegemony," Bennett said. Amy's expression grew serious. "They are mobilizing everything they have. Our deep space sensors detect fleet movements on a scale we have never seen before. They are not just expanding, they are preparing for conquest. How long before they move against Council space? Based on their current preparations, I estimate 3 to 6 months before major offensive operations begin. The Council species seem to be aware of the threat, but they are too busy fighting each other to organize a proper defense." President Bennett was quiet for a moment. "Any indication they plan to move against human space?" "None. In fact, our intelligence suggests they are deliberately avoiding any approach vectors that lead toward Earth. It is almost like they want us to stay neutral while they deal with the Council." After the call ended, Amy walked to the observation window that looked out over the Martian landscape. In the distance, she could see the construction sites where new shipyards were being built. Earth was not staying idle during this crisis. Human industrial capacity, no longer focused on helping alien species, was being redirected toward expanding their own military forces. Dr. Rachel Green sat in her office in Geneva, reading diplomatic messages that arrived every day from alien governments. Her staff had stopped printing them out. There were simply too many. Instead, they organized them by category: threats, bribes, pleas, and desperate offers of negotiation. The threats had stopped coming after the first month. Alien military leaders quickly realized that attacking human space would be extremely costly. Humans had spent decades studying alien military tactics while serving as peacekeepers and advisors. They knew every weakness, every blind spot, every limitation of alien forces. The bribes had grown more elaborate over time. The Zephyrian Collective had offered exclusive mining rights to entire star systems. The Centaurian Republic promised technology transfers that they had previously refused to share. The Altarian Federation offered to make Earth the medical center of the galaxy, with alien species paying enormous fees for human expertise. But it was the pleas that were hardest to ignore. Personal messages from alien individuals who had worked alongside humans for years. Scientists who could not continue their research without human colleagues. Engineers who watched their projects fail without human innovation. Doctors who could not save lives without human medical knowledge. Rachel picked up one message that had arrived that morning. It was from Dr. Velnera, the Altarian researcher who had worked with Dr. Helen Carter on blood disease cures. The message was simple. Please come back. People are dying. Rachel knew that Helen Carter was working on similar research in Earth laboratories, but without access to live Altarian subjects, progress was slow. The cure that could have been completed in months might now take years, but that was the choice the Galactic Council had made. They wanted human expertise, without giving humans any real voice in galactic affairs. Now they were learning what it meant to lose that expertise entirely. The situation reports kept coming in. Trade routes that humans had protected for decades were now plagued by pirates. Negotiations that humans had mediated were collapsing into conflicts. Infrastructure that humans had maintained was breaking down. Senator Katie Moore, who ran Earth's intelligence service, provided daily briefings on the growing chaos. Her network of agents and sensors painted a picture of a galaxy that had grown dangerously dependent on human involvement. The most concerning development is the breakdown of the Council itself, Katie reported during her evening briefing. Several member species are questioning whether the organization can survive without human participation. Some are already making separate peace treaties with aggressive neighbors, abandoning their Council obligations. Any species showing interest in aligning with humanity instead of the Council? Rachel asked. A few. The Procyon Federation has been asking about bilateral trade agreements. The Sirius Commonwealth wants to negotiate security arrangements outside the Council framework. But most species are still hoping the Council will find a solution. Rachel reviewed the intelligence summaries in her personal office after the briefing. The galaxy that humans had served faithfully for decades was crumbling. Species that had treated humanity as junior partners were discovering that they could not maintain their civilization without human help. But the most disturbing reports came from the Galactic Rim, where ancient enemies of the Council were stirring. The hegemony had been contained for centuries by a combination of Council naval forces and human intelligence operations. With the humans gone and the Council distracted by internal conflicts, those ancient enemies saw opportunity. Captain Rodriguez received new orders the next morning. His patrol area was being expanded to cover approach routes from the Galactic Rim. Other human warships were taking similar positions. Earth was not preparing to attack anyone, but they were making sure that any threat approaching human space would be detected early. The silence from alien space continued, but it was no longer peaceful. It was the silence of a galaxy holding its breath, waiting to see what would break first: the Council's unity, the hegemony's patience, or humanity's resolve to stay out of alien conflicts. 6 months ago, the galaxy had rejected humanity's offer of partnership. Now that same galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans chose to be spectators instead of participants in galactic affairs. The attack came without warning. Senator Katie Moore watched the sensor feeds from her command center deep beneath the Colorado Mountains as hegemony fleets struck 3 Council worlds simultaneously. The aliens had chosen their targets well. Altair Prime, Rigel Station, and the Centaurian shipyards at Wolf 1061. Ma'am, we are receiving emergency transmissions from all three systems, reported Commander Nick Taylor, who had been promoted to head Katie's field operations. The Council forces are requesting immediate assistance. Katie studied the tactical displays showing the battles in real time. Her network of stealth sensors provided better intelligence than anything the Council possessed. She could see exactly how badly the alien defenders were losing. "Response?" Nick asked. "None," Katie replied firmly. "Continue monitoring and recording everything, but no assistance." The hegemony forces moved with precision that surprised even Katie's analysts. These were not the same raiders that had harassed the Galactic Rim for centuries. Someone had organized them, trained them, and equipped them with modern weapons. Their battle formations showed clear understanding of Council military weaknesses. At Altair Prime, the defending fleet tried to use the Centaurian Wall formation, a defensive strategy that had worked well when human tactical advisors helped coordinate the movements. Without those advisors, the formation fell apart within minutes. Altarian ships collided with each other trying to maintain positions they did not understand. The battle at Rigel Station was even worse. The station commander attempted a fighting withdrawal that human strategists had developed for exactly this kind of attack. But he executed it wrong, leaving his flanks exposed at the worst possible moment. Hegemony forces cut through the defending, ships like a knife through paper. Only at Wolf 1061 did the Council forces show any competence. The Centaurian admiral there abandoned complex tactics entirely and ordered a simple frontal assault. It was crude and costly, but at least his ship stayed organized long enough to inflict some damage on the attackers. How long until all three? "Systems fall?" Katie asked her tactical analyst, Lieutenant Sarah Davis. "Altair Prime is already lost," Sarah reported. "Rigel Station will fall within 6 hours. Wolf 1061 might hold out for 2 days, but only if they get reinforcements." Katie knew that reinforcements were not coming. The Council's rapid response fleet was positioned near the galactic core, 3 days away from any of the battle sites. By the time they arrived, the hegemony would be long gone with their prizes. "Ma'am, priority message from the Altarian Federation," Nick announced. "They are requesting emergency consultation with human military advisors." "Denied," Katie said, without hesitation. "All requests for assistance are to be denied until further notice." She watched the displays as Altair Prime, one of the most important agricultural worlds in Council space, fell under hegemony control. Millions of civilians would soon be under alien occupation. Food supplies for dozens of systems would be cut off. The ripple effects would destabilize the entire sector. And it was just the beginning. Commander Nick Taylor stood in the observation room of Deep Space Monitor Station 7, hidden in the asteroid field of a dead system. His team of 12 specialists watched the galaxy burn through arrays of sensors that the Council could not detect. The hegemony victory at the 3 Council worlds had been crushing, but what happened afterward was even more disturbing. Instead of consolidating their conquests, the hegemony forces had immediately moved to attack 6 more systems. They were not just raiding, they were conducting a coordinated campaign of expansion. "Sir, we are intercepting Council emergency communications," reported Specialist Tom Sullivan. "The Councilor Prime is calling for a full military mobilization." Nick reviewed the intercepted messages on his screen. The Council was finally waking up to the threat they faced, but their response showed how much they had depended on human expertise. Military units were being sent to the wrong positions. Supply lines were being established along routes that human advisors had warned were vulnerable to attack. Defense strategies were being implemented without understanding their limitations. "Sir, look at this," said Specialist Danny Rodriguez, pointing to his sensor display. "The hegemony fleets are avoiding these approach vectors entirely." Nick studied the tactical map. Danny was right. The hegemony forces were carefully avoiding any route that would take them near human space. They were conquering Council territory in a wide arc that curved around Earth's sphere of influence. It is almost like they want us to stay neutral, Nick observed. They are making sure not to give us any reason to intervene. The implications were troubling. The hegemony was not just more organized than before. They were strategically sophisticated. Someone was planning this campaign with full knowledge of human capabilities and human politics. Back on Earth, President Claire Bennett convened an emergency session of the Defense Council. The Situation Room beneath the White House filled with military leaders, intelligence chiefs, and diplomatic advisors. Options, Bennett said simply. General Amy Foster spoke first. Military intervention is possible but costly. We could stop the hegemony advance, but it would require committing most of our fleet, and we would be doing it to save species that voted to exclude us from their government. Intelligence assessment? Bennett asked, turning to Senator Katie Moore. The hegemony is moving faster than we expected, but they are being careful not to threaten human interests. They seem to want us to stay out of this conflict entirely. My recommendation is to continue monitoring without intervention. Dr. Rachel Green raised her hand. Madam President, we are receiving thousands of requests for assistance from Council species. Some are offering significant concessions, full voting rights, territorial grants, technology transfers. The Procyon Federation is even offering to withdraw from the Council entirely and ally directly with Earth. Too little, too late, Bennett replied. They could have offered those terms 7 months ago when we asked for basic respect. They chose to keep us as second-class participants instead. Admiral Peter Collins, attending by secure video link from the Lunar Defense Station, added his perspective. Our military preparations are ahead of schedule. If we do decide to intervene, we will be doing so from a position of strength. But I agree with the intelligence assessment. The hegemony seems to want us to stay neutral. The meeting continued for 3 hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Earth would maintain its policy of non-intervention while continuing to monitor the situation. The galaxy that had rejected human partnership would have to face this crisis alone. The decision became harder to maintain as reports of the hegemony's advance continued to arrive. Ancient worlds fell to the invaders. Billions of civilians fled from the advancing fleets. Refugee ships crowded into the remaining Council territory, straining resources and creating panic. Major Lisa Hayes, now serving as President Bennett's military aide, provided daily briefings on the deteriorating situation. The Council has lost 12 systems in the past week, she reported. Their military response is completely uncoordinated. They are making every mistake we warned them about for decades. Casualties? Bennett asked. Unknown, but estimates suggest hundreds of millions of refugees and millions of military casualties. The hegemony is not interested in occupation. They are systematically destroying Council military infrastructure and industrial capacity. Bennett reviewed the intelligence reports in her private office each evening. Images of burning cities and fleeing civilians filled her screens. She had to remind herself that this was not happening because Earth refused to help. It was happening because the Council had refused to accept Earth as an equal partner. But the pressure was mounting. Religious leaders called for humanitarian intervention. Former diplomats published articles demanding that Earth save its former allies. Public protests gathered outside government buildings, demanding action to stop the slaughter. The strongest pressure came from former Earth personnel who had worked in alien space. Dr. Helen Carter requested permission to return to Altair Prime to help with refugee medical care. Colonel Ryan Blake wanted to organize humanitarian relief missions to the war zones. Dozens of other former advisors, scientists, and aid workers requested permission to assist their alien colleagues. Bennett denied every request. Earth's policy was clear. No intervention, no assistance, no involvement in alien conflicts. The ED, species that had voted to exclude humanity from galactic leadership, would have to solve this crisis themselves. The breaking point came when the hegemony attacked Kepler Prime, the research world where Dr. Helen Carter had worked for 6 years. The planet's defenses collapsed in less than 4 hours. Hundreds of thousands of civilians, including many of Helen's former colleagues, were killed or captured. That evening, Bennett received a personal message from Dr. Velnara, the Altarian researcher who had partnered with Helen Carter. The message was brief. "We are dying. Please remember us as friends, not as the enemies our governments made us." Bennett stared at the message for a long time. The cost of Earth's withdrawal was becoming clear, measured in alien lives and destroyed civilizations. But the alternative was to reward the Council's rejection of human equality by saving them from the consequences of their own decisions. The galaxy had chosen to exclude humanity from its government. The agricultural world of Harvest Prime had never been intended as a fortress. Its rolling green fields and peaceful farming communities existed to feed half the Galactic Council's core worlds. When the hegemony fleets arrived in the system, the defenders had 3 days to prepare for the impossible. Colonel Steve Parker watched the battle unfold from his hidden monitoring station in the outer asteroid belt. His stealth sensors recorded every detail as the largest food production center in Council space fell to the invaders. The tactical mistakes made by the defenders were so basic that Steve found himself wanting to scream warnings across the void. "Sir, the orbital defense platforms are firing at maximum range," reported Sergeant Katie Moore from her sensor station. "They are wasting their ammunition on targets too far away to hit effectively." Steve shook his head in frustration. Human. Military advisors had spent years training alien defense crews on proper engagement protocols. Maximum effective range was not the same as maximum possible range. The platforms should have waited for the hegemony ships to close distance before opening fire. "The defenders are breaking formation," Katie continued. "The Centaurian cruisers are moving to engage independently." This was even worse. The defense plan for Harvest Prime had been designed by human strategists specifically to account for the mixed alien fleets defending the system. Centaurian ships were fast but lightly armored. Altarian vessels were heavily shielded but slow to maneuver. Procyon fighters were excellent for harassment, but vulnerable to concentrated fire. Working together under human coordination, these diverse forces could have provided an effective defense. Separated and acting independently, they were easy targets for the disciplined hegemony fleets. The battle lasted 73 hours. Steve watched every minute of it, recording the systematic destruction of forces that should have been able to hold the system. The Centaurian cruisers were picked off, first caught out of position when they tried to engage the hegemony vanguard alone. The Altarian heavy ships lasted longer, but without fighter cover, they were sitting targets for hegemony bombers. The worst moment came when the Planetary Defense Coordinator tried to execute a fighting withdrawal to the outer system. It was a complex maneuver that required precise timing and coordination between multiple ship types. Steve had helped design the tactic 3 years earlier, working with the same alien officers who were now trying to implement it. They got it completely wrong. Instead of withdrawing in stages with covering fire, all the defending ships tried to retreat at once. The faster Centaurian vessels left the slower Altarian ships behind. The Procyon fighters ran out of fuel trying to cover a retreat that was happening too quickly. Within 2 hours, the organized withdrawal became a complete rout. "Sir, the surface. Defense grid is activating," Katie reported. "They are targeting the hegemony landing ships." Steve watched as the planetary ion cannons opened fire on the invasion force approaching Harvest Prime's surface. These weapons had been installed under human supervision and were capable of destroying capital ships in orbit. Used properly, they could have broken the hegemony assault. But the timing was wrong again. The cannons fired at the first wave of landing ships, revealing their positions to the hegemony fleet. Counter-battery fire from orbit destroyed half the defense grid before it could reload. The remaining cannons were overwhelmed by the sheer number of targets in the second wave. "How many refugees are they evacuating?" Steve asked. Katie checked her displays. Estimated 12 million civilians in flight from the major population centers, but most of the evacuation ships are heading directly toward the jump points, Steve cursed under his breath. Another basic mistake. The evacuation plans he had helped develop called for refugee ships to scatter in multiple directions, using the system's asteroid fields and gas giant moons as cover. Flying directly toward the jump points made them easy targets for hegemony interceptors. The slaughter of the refugee convoys was swift and merciless. Hegemony fighters swept through the fleeing civilian ships like wolves through sheep. Millions of farmers, teachers, engineers, and children died in the cold vacuum of space, their only crime being born on a world that the hegemony wanted to control. By the end of the third day, Harvest Prime belonged to the invaders. The food that had fed billions of council citizens would now supply hegemony war fleets. The agricultural knowledge that had taken centuries to develop was in enemy hands. Most importantly, the psychological impact on the remaining council worlds was devastating. If Harvest Prime could fall in 3 days, nowhere was safe. The news reached Earth 6 hours after the battle ended. President Bennett read the intelligence reports in her private study, surrounded by images of the agricultural world she had visited twice during her diplomatic career. She remembered walking through the vast grain fields with the Altarian agricultural minister, discussing crop rotation techniques that could feed entire star systems. Now those fields were burning, and the minister was probably dead. "Madam President, we have urgent communications from 7 different council species," Dr. Rachel Green reported during the emergency briefing. "They are requesting immediate military assistance." "Response?" Bennett asked, though she already knew what it would be, the same as always. "We acknowledge their communications but provide no assistance. However, the tone of the messages is changing. The Procyon Federation is offering to cede 3 star systems to Earth in exchange for military intervention. The Sirius Commonwealth is promising full technology transfers." Bennett reviewed the offer summaries on her tablet. The concessions being offered were extraordinary, things that the Council had refused to consider even when humans were active participants in galactic affairs. Territory, technology, trade rights, and political autonomy that went far beyond what Earth had originally requested. "Too late," she said firmly. "They should have offered these terms when we asked for basic equality, not when they need us to. Save their civilization." Admiral Collins joined the meeting by secure video link from the Lunar Defense Platform. "Madam President, our intelligence indicates that the fall of Harvest Prime is causing panic throughout Council space. Several member species are questioning whether the Council can protect them at all. Any indication that species are considering separate peace treaties with the hegemony?" Bennett asked. "Yes, ma'am. We have intercepted communications suggesting that at least 4 species are exploring diplomatic options with the invaders. The Council's unity is breaking down faster than their military resistance." This was exactly what Earth's strategists had predicted. The Galactic Council had maintained order for over 1,000 years by projecting strength and unity. Once that projection failed, member species would start looking for alternatives, either new protectors or accommodation with their enemies. Senator Katie Moore provided the intelligence update. "The hegemony advance is accelerating. They are not pausing to consolidate their conquests. They are using each victory to launch attacks on adjacent systems. Our analysts estimate they will control 20% of Council space within 2 months at this rate." "What about civilian casualties?" Bennett asked. Katie's expression grew grim. "Conservative estimates suggest over 50 million dead so far, with hundreds of millions of refugees. The Council's evacuation procedures are completely inadequate without human coordination. They are losing far more civilians than necessary." Bennett closed her eyes for a moment. 50 million beings dead because the Council could not defend itself without human help. Hundreds of millions more fleeing from their homes, crowding into refugee camps on worlds that could barely support their own populations. But she reminded herself that this was not happening because Earth refused to help. This was happening because the Council had refused to accept Earth as an equal partner when times were good. They had wanted human expertise and human blood to solve their problems, but they had not wanted human voices in their decisions. "Any change in our domestic situation?" Bennett asked Dr. Green. "Growing pressure for humanitarian intervention," Rachel replied. "3 major religious organizations have called for Earth to provide refugee assistance. The opposition party is demanding emergency sessions of Congress to debate intervention. Public opinion polls show 60% support for some form of action." Bennett understood the pressure. Images of alien refugees filled the news feeds daily. Children of a dozen, species crying for parents who would never come home. Elderly beings who had lived peaceful lives for centuries suddenly forced to flee from advancing armies. It was impossible to watch without feeling the urge to help, but helping now would reward the Council's previous rejection of human equality. It would establish the precedent that aliens could treat humans as second-class citizens during peacetime, then demand human protection during crises. "What about former Earth personnel?" Bennett asked. "Dr. Helen Carter has submitted 14 requests to return to the war zones for humanitarian medical work," Rachel reported. "Colonel Blake wants to organize refugee relief missions. Captain Rodriguez has volunteered to lead evacuation escort missions. Overall, about 40% of our former alien space personnel have requested permission to assist." Bennett had expected this. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty's Edge, watching the stars through the main screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks now, mapping unknown systems and looking for new planets. Jake was 35 years old and had been commanding ships for 8 years. He had brown hair, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of calm voice that made his crew trust him completely. The Liberty's Edge was not a big ship compared to the main battle cruisers back home. She was built for exploration and research, with labs and sensor equipment taking up most of her space. The crew of 42 people included scientists, engineers, and a small security team. Most people who saw the ship would think it was just another peaceful research vessel. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on long-range sensors," said Amy Turner from her station. Amy was the communications officer, a young woman with red hair and green eyes who could crack any code or frequency. She had been staring at her screen for the past 10 minutes with a worried look. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, walking over to her station. "Multiple ships, sir. Big ones. They're moving in formation about 2 light hours away from us. The computer says there are at least 8 vessels, maybe more." Lisa Parker looked up from the engineering station. She was a tall woman with black hair who knew every bolt and wire on the ship. "Could be a trading convoy, Captain. We're near the edge of explored space. Lots of merchant ships use this route." Ryan Cooper shook his head from the tactical station. He was built like a soldier, which he had been before joining the exploration service. "Trading convoys don't fly in attack formations, Lisa. These ships are spread out like they're hunting for something." Dr. Nathan Brooks walked onto the bridge, carrying his medical scanner. He was the ship's doctor, a thin man with gray hair who always seemed to know more than he let on. "Captain, if we're talking about unknown alien ships, shouldn't we be extra careful? We don't know what's out there." Jake nodded. "Amy, try to get a better reading on those ships. Ryan, bring our defensive systems online, but keep weapons powered. Down. I don't want to look like a threat." "Yes, sir," both officers replied. The bridge fell quiet except for the soft beeping of computers and the low hum of the ship's engines. Jake had commanded 3 different ships before the Liberty's Edge, but this was his first time this far from human space. Every captain dreamed of making first contact with a new alien species, but they also knew it could go very wrong very quickly. "Captain," Amy said, her voice tight with worry, I'm getting clearer readings now. Those ships are definitely alien, and they're big. The largest one is twice our size. They're also changing course to intercept us. How long until they reach us? Jake asked. At their current speed, about 6 hours. Ryan looked up from his console. Sir, I'm reading heavy weapons on all those ships. Energy cannons, missile launchers, the works. These aren't merchants. Lisa stood up from her station. Captain, should I start preparing the ship for combat? I can reroute power from the labs to our shields and engines. Jake thought for a moment. The Liberty's Edge was fast and had decent shields, but she was not built for fighting. If these aliens wanted a battle, running might be the only option, but there was always a chance they could talk their way out of trouble. Not yet, Lisa. Amy, start broadcasting standard first contact messages on all frequencies. Tell them we're explorers from Earth and we come in peace. Maybe they'll want to talk instead of fight. Amy's fingers flew over her keyboard. Broadcasting now, Captain. I'm using the standard mathematical sequences and peaceful symbols. The hours crawled by slowly. The alien ships kept coming closer, but they did not respond to any of Amy's messages. The crew went about their duties, but everyone could feel the tension building. Jake ordered the ship to yellow alert, which meant all crew members had to stay at their stations. Dr. Brooks ran medical checks on everyone to make sure they were ready for whatever might happen. Lisa checked every system, on the ship twice. Ryan kept watching the alien ships through the sensors, counting their weapons and trying to figure out their battle plans. Captain, Amy called out when the alien ships were only 30 minutes away. I'm getting a response. It's not friendly. Put it on speakers, Jake ordered. A harsh, growling voice filled the bridge. The words were in an alien language, but the computer quickly translated them. Unknown vessel, you have entered the space of the Zephyrian Empire. You will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction. Jake stepped forward. Amy, open a channel. Channel. Open, sir. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship USS Liberty's Edge. We are peaceful explorers and did not know this space belonged to anyone. We are willing to leave your territory immediately if that is what you wish. The response came back quickly, and the alien voice sounded even angrier. Humans, we have not heard of your species. It does not matter. You will surrender your ship or be destroyed. You have 10 of your minutes to decide. Ryan looked at his captain. Sir, they're spreading out to surround us. Classic attack formation. If we're going to run, we need to do it now. Jake stared at the main screen where the alien ships were getting closer. 8 large warships against 1 small exploration vessel. The math was simple and ugly, but something about the aliens' demands bothered him. They had not asked any questions about humanity or where the ship came from. They just wanted to take the Liberty's Edge like it was some kind of prize. Amy, try one more time. Tell them we're willing to withdraw peacefully and that we have valuable information to trade. Amy sent the message, but the response was immediate. Your time is up, humans. Prepare to be boarded. The alien ships opened fire, not killing shots, but warning blasts that lit up space around the Liberty's Edge. Then Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. Small ships were launching from the alien vessels, heading straight for his ship. Boarding pods, Ryan said grimly. They're not just threatening us, Captain. They're actually doing it. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Amy looked scared but determined. Lisa was already working to boost their shields. Ryan had his, hand on the weapons controls, waiting for orders. Dr. Brooks stood quietly in the corner, but his eyes were hard as stone. Red alert, Jake announced over the ship's intercom. All hands to battle stations. We are being boarded by hostile aliens. As alarms began ringing throughout the ship, Jake made a decision that would change everything. The aliens thought they were attacking a helpless research vessel full of scared scientists. They had no idea what kind of mistake they had just made. The Liberty's Edge might look like a peaceful exploration ship, but every person on board was trained for combat. The science equipment could be turned into weapons. The research labs could become bomb factories. and Jake Morrison had not told his crew everything about their real mission. The aliens were about to learn that touching a human ship was the worst mistake they could possibly make.